I've no choice but to start with the crank seal and to give the side of the engine a good clean. I'm in the driver's side wheel arch, driver's side front wheel arch, pulled the wheel arch liner back, took the front wheel off. And what we've got are these 3 E11 star bolts that aren't high torque or anything, so they're very easy to remove, and the crank pulley will just drop off. I should clarify, this technically isn't a crank pulley, it's a harmonic dampener. It's a crank driven pulley. The timing gear, the engine is a chain driven engine, so the timing chain is inside the block. We've just got this crank driven pulley that is used for the auxiliary belt, so for the aircon pump and the alternator. I'm just going to clean the side of the engine up the best I can. So now we're very carefully going to drill a hole in the old seal. Absolute unbelievable. I'm struggling with the drilling, so bear in mind I've obviously got to do this without damaging the crank, because if I damage the crank I'll damage the new seal while putting it on. So we'll keep this and we'll use it to knock the new seal into place. Check it against the old seal, same size. So I'm watching this inside edge doesn't get folded over. Because the edge of the seals are metal, you can actually use the old seal to knock the new one fully into position. That's the crank seal done. New tensioner, not so easy. It's located on the front of the engine, but there isn't much access to get to it. So I might remove these hoses here, boost pipes, just so that I've got a bit more room to get to the bolts holding it in position. So I've removed the boost pipe, I've moved this out of the way, and it's still pretty much impossible to get a tool in there. We need to get those Torx screws. There's one there and there's one hidden under the tensioner itself. So I'm going to remove 2 T20 Torx screws from the top of this fan, and hopefully I'll be able to pull that out of the way, which will give me enough room to get a tool in. So now I've dropped the fan down out of the way, I've got enough room to get onto the head of the star bolts. I just need to cut that cable tie. Seems that the bolts are still too long with the intercooler in the way, so I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this. In order to finally get enough space to get these long bolts out, what I've had to do is undo the left-hand engine mount, jack the engine up on the sump, and also push the engine back while removing the tensioner. Really quite a pointlessly difficult job, just because of how crammed in it is. So a new tensioner, got the bolts not fitted yet. We're just going to shove it down the side of the engine first, because the alternator makes removal a bit difficult. It means that you have to move it towards the side of the engine and out. We'll stick the bolts back in. Get the end of the bolts lined back up with a hole before trying to push the tensioner fully back into position. At least now we've got plenty of room to tighten the bolts into position. Don't worry about these bolts being overly tight, they're only rated 20 Newton meters anyway. Now we need to lock the tensioner loose so we can refit the new belt. Now we've got a 30mm profile here, and all we need to do once we've turned the tensioner is press this pin in and it will lock in position. Because of its location, it is actually not possible to get a socket on here usually, but what I've done is I've left the engine mount off and the engine jacked up in order to be able to get a 30mm socket on there, and this will make locking the tensioner much easier. So you wouldn't normally be able to get a socket on here, but moving the engine has afforded us some extra space. So I've pulled the bar towards me and pushed the pin in to lock the tensioner. Now I'll be able to refit the belt. I'm not entirely sure how this works, whether it's driving the water pump or what, but when the crank driven pulley is in position, there's no clearance between the pulley and the whatever this component is. So I'm going to refit the belt with the pulley only held on by one bolt, which will allow me enough room to get the belt back into position without any issue. I wasn't aware at the time, but that black component drives the water pump off the back of the auxiliary belt for some reason. I've never come across it before. It can actually be unlocked and moved out of the way, but this method that I used did work. It's just not necessarily the correct method. There is a way to unlock that black component. So now to let the tensioner off the pin. It's spring loaded, so by moving the tensioner clockwise, it's allowed the pin to spring free. So just checking the belt is on the pulleys as it should be. And now we're ready to start the car. The reason it's wet is I've sprayed a bit of degreaser on the side of the engine to get rid of